Behold the 1942 Monarch lathe, a hulking beast of cast iron that has turned raw steel into precision parts for over 8 decades without flinching. Compare that to a gleaming $100,000 CNC machine from 2020, now sitting lifeless in a shop corner, killed not by wear, but by a failed proprietary circuit board. How did we trade eternal iron for disposable tech, and what have we lost in the process? Let's rewind to the early 1940s, a time when the world was burning, and industrial might was the only thing standing between freedom and collapse. The Second World War had turned factories into battlegrounds of production, where every gear, every bolt, every rifle barrel had to be churned out faster than the enemy could destroy them. Failure wasn't just a financial loss. It was a death sentence for entire nations. The United States, thrust into the role of the world's arsenal, needed machines that could endure relentless shifts. Machines that wouldn't buckle under the pressure of a desperate war effort. There was no room for fragility when the stakes were measured in human lives. Manufacturers like Monarch understood this grim reality, crafting lathes and mills not as mere tools, but as weapons of industrial survival. If a machine broke down, it wasn't just a delay, it was a betrayal of the soldiers waiting on the front lines. The demand was clear. Build it tough, build it fast and build last, because there might not be tomorrow to fix it. Now, let's dive into the raw engineering that made these old iron giants immortal. The Monarch lathe wasn't just a machine. It was a fortress of mechanical ingenuity. Its bed, forged from high-grade cast iron, weighed in at over a ton, designed to absorb the punishing vibrations of cutting hard steel without so much as a shudder. The gears, cut from heat-treated alloy steel, were overbuilt with safety factors that modern engineers would scoff at as wasteful. Yet, they machined with a precision that could hold tolerances to 1/1000th of an inch. The electrical system was a masterpiece of simplicity hardwired, with standardized contactors and relays that any electrician could source and replace in a matter of hours. There were no delicate chips or encrypted software to fail, just copper, iron, and brute force. When this beast spun up, you could feel the inertia in your chest, a deep rumble of power that shook the concrete floor. The heat from the motor radiated through the shop, a constant reminder of the energy being harnessed. Every component was designed for field repair, ensuring that even in the chaos of wartime production, downtime was measured in minutes, not days. This wasn't just engineering. It was a defiance of entropy itself, a machine built to outlast the men who made it. But that defiance came at a cost, and it was paid in blood and sweat by the workers who stood at these machines. Operating a manual lathe like the Monarch was no desk job. It was a grueling test of endurance. Machinists worked 12-hour shifts in sweltering factories, the air thick with the stench of cutting oil and metal dust. Their hands, calloused and scarred, wrestled with heavy chucks and raw stock, muscles straining under the weight of unforgiving steel. A moment of distraction could cost a finger or worse. The spinning spindle didn't care about fatigue. It could rip through flesh as easily as it cut metal. Heat exhaustion was a constant companion, with some collapsing at their posts during brutal summer months. And yet, these workers pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their labor was feeding the war machine. They weren't just shaping parts. They were shaping history, one grinding turn at a time. Their sacrifice was as integral to the machine's legacy as the iron itself, a human toll that modern automation can never fully erase from memory. As decades rolled by, the Monarch and its kin proved their worth, enduring through post-war booms, recessions, and countless shop floors. These machines took a beating, spills of coolant, overloaded cuts, neglected maintenance, and still kept spinning. Their casting seasoned by time into an almost mythical resilience. Fast forward to today, and contrast that with a modern CNC machining center, a marvel of digital precision that can be rendered useless by a single dried-out capacitor on a custom motherboard. These new machines, tethered to proprietary electronics, fall victim to what I call the CNC death clock, a built-in expiration date dictated not by mechanical wear, but by the whims of manufacturers who lock away firmware updates and discontinue critical parts. A 2020 model, barely out of warranty, sits scrapped because a $10 chip failed, and the replacement board is no longer made. We stopped building for eternity because profit margins demanded planned obsolescence, and so-called safety regulations turned into theater, prioritizing litigation over longevity. The result? Tons of high-grade iron are melted down, not because they've failed, but because a digital dependency was engineered into their core. So where does this leave the old iron now? Some, like this 1942 Monarch, still stand in small shops or museums, a testament to a time when we built to survive. Others have been scrapped, their legacy erased by the rush for newer, shinier, and ultimately weaker tech. As I look at this lathe, I can't help but wonder, in our race for progress, have we traded the enduring strength of iron for the fleeting convenience of circuits, only to find ourselves owning nothing at all? Let's turn back the clock to the human cost of operating these industrial titans, the men and women who poured their very essence into keeping the war machine alive. The factory floor in the 1940s wasn't a sterile, air-conditioned workspace with ergonomic chairs and safety sensors. It was a brutal arena where the Monarch lathe loomed like a mechanical overlord, demanding relentless focus and physical grit from every soul who dared to stand before it. These machinists, often working in dimly lit, cavernous plants, faced conditions that would shatter the sensibilities of today's workforce. The roar of motors and the screech of metal on metal drowned out conversation, leaving workers isolated in their own deafening world. Sweat dripped into their eyes as they battled the heat radiating from overworked machines. The ambient temperature in summer months, often climbing past what any human body should endure. Their clothing, soaked through with perspiration and cutting oil, clung to their skin, while the constant vibration of the equipment rattled their bones, leaving them with aching joints and a lingering numbness in their hands. The physical demands were merciless. Hoisting heavy steel stock onto the lathe required raw strength, often without the aid of modern cranes or lifts. Every adjustment of the cutting tool was a test of precision under pressure, muscles straining to hold steady against the unyielding force of spinning metal. A single misstep could be catastrophic, fingers caught in a chuck, arms pulled into a gear train, or worse, a catastrophic kickback sending sharp debris flying like shrapnel. Amputations weren't just risks. They were grim realities, with some shops keeping a grim tally of lost digits as a badge of the trade. Beyond the immediate dangers, the long-term toll was just as heavy, breathing in fine metal dust day after day scarred lungs, leading to chronic coughs and respiratory ailments that haunted workers into old age. The mental strain was no less punishing. The unrelenting pace of wartime production left no room for error or rest, pushing many to the brink of exhaustion or breakdown. Yet, they soldiered on, fueled by a sense of duty, knowing that every part they turned was a lifeline to someone on the battlefield far away. Fast forward through the decades, and these old iron warriors like the Monarch have faced their own battles against time, yet they stand defiant. Many have clocked countless hours of abuse-overloaded cuts, skipped maintenance, and exposure to the elements in drafty shops, yet their core design refuses to yield. The sheer mass of their construction, the overbuilt components, have allowed them to shrug off punishment that would demolish today's equipment. Now, place that enduring strength beside a modern CNC machining center, a machine costing six figures, that can be felled by something as trivial as a firmware glitch or a discontinued control module. Take, for instance, a 2019 model lathe in a mid-sized shop, bricked after a proprietary drive unit failed. The manufacturer, long since moved on to newer models, offers no replacement and no schematic, leaving a perfectly good frame of precision-engineered metal destined for the scrapyard. This isn't wear on tear. It's a deliberate death sentence coded into the machine's electronics, a stark reminder of the CNC death clock ticking away. We abandoned the old ways of building for permanence because corporate balance sheets favor turnover over toughness. Planned obsolescence became the new gospel, disguised as innovation, while layers of so-called safety protocols morphed into excuses to lock owners out of their own equipment. The ironies, a machine from Fort to patched up with a wrench and some ingenuity, while a 2024 model dies because a software update was withheld. And what of the legacy of these ancient giants? Today, Some still grind away in forgotten corners of small-town workshops, operated by craftsmen who understand their value, their dials, and levers a living link to a bygone era. Others rest in industrial museums, polished and silent, as relics of a time when durability was a virtue, not a liability. Far too many, though, have been torn apart, their seasoned iron melted down to feed the insatiable appetite for disposable tech. Standing before one of these survivors, I'm struck by a sobering thought. In our relentless pursuit of efficiency and profit, have we sacrificed the very soul of craftsmanship, trading machines that could last a lifetime for ones that are designed to fail before the ink on the warranty dries? Let's peel back another layer of this industrial tragedy and look at the stark contrast between the raw, unyielding resilience of machines, like the 1942 Monarch lathe, and the fragile, fleeting existence of today's CNC wonders. These old iron beasts were not just built, they were overbuilt, with every nut, bolt, and bearing calculated to withstand a lifetime of punishment. They've endured decades of relentless operation, from the frenzied pace of wartime production to the grind of post-war industry, taking on everything thrown at them, spilled coolant eating at their surfaces, operators pushing them beyond rated limits, and years of dust and grime caking their joints. Yet, their core remains unshaken, the sheer mass of their cast iron frames absorbing shocks that would rattle modern machines apart. You can still find some of these titans in backwater shops, their worn handles and faded paint telling stories of 1,000 jobs completed, still ready to turn a piece of stock with the same stubborn precision they had 80 years ago. It's a testament to an era when breaking down wasn't an option. It was a disgrace. Now, cast your eyes on a modern CNC machining center, a gleaming monument to digital precision, often priced at over $100,000, sitting dead in a workshop not because its spindle gave out or its bed warped, but because a tiny, irreplaceable circuit board decided its time was up. Consider a real-world case. A 2021 vertical milling machine, barely 3 years old, rendered useless when its proprietary control module burned out during a routine job. The manufacturer, having already shifted focus to the next model, offers no spare parts, no repair manual, and no hope, just a suggestion to buy a new unit. This isn't an accident. It's a calculated expiration date, the CNC death clock, embedded into the machine's very design through locked software and custom electronics that no independent technician can touch. The frame of that mill, a masterpiece of engineering in its own right, is reduced to scrap metal, not because it failed mechanically, but because a digital handcuff snapped shut. This fragility isn't progress. It's a betrayal of the very principles that built the industrial world. Why did we abandon the enduring designs of the past for this disposable reality? The answer lies in the cold calculus of profit over permanence. After the mid-20th century, as manufacturing shifted from a craft to a commodity, companies realized they could make more money not by selling a machine once, but by ensuring it needed replacing every few years. Planned obsolescence became the unspoken rule, woven into every aspect of modern design, from the use of proprietary components that can't be sourced independently to encrypted firmware that locks out even the most skilled repair techs. Add to that the veneer of safety and liability concerns regulations that often serve more as legal shields for corporations than genuine protections for users. And you have a system where durability is a dirty word. A machine like the Monarch was built to be owned, to be a partner in a craftsman's work for generations. Today's CNC machines aren't sold. They're leased, tethered to a manufacturer's whims through subscription-based updates and parts monopolies. The result is a mechanical graveyard, filled with equipment that could have lasted decades, if not for a deliberate decision to prioritize quarterly earnings over lasting value. The fallout of this shift is more than just financial, it's cultural. We've lost the ethos of stewardship, the pride in maintaining and passing down tools that are as much a part of a family's legacy as the skills to use them. Instead, shop owners today live in constant dread of the next software patch or discontinued component, knowing they don't truly own the machines they paid for. They're at the mercy of a system that views their investment as a temporary revenue stream, not a lifelong asset. Compare that to the machinist of the 1940s, who could troubleshoot a failed relay on his Monarch with a multimeter and a spare part from the local hardware store back in business before the shift ended. That kind of independence has been engineered out of existence, replaced by a dependency that benefits no one but the boardroom. It's a bitter irony. The same technology that promised to make us more efficient has instead shackled us to a cycle of waste and replacement. And so, we stand at a crossroads, surrounded by the ghosts of industrial might and the husks of modern failures. Some of those old monarchs, and their peers still soldier on, hidden in the corners of workshops run by those who refuse to bow to the disposable age. Their rumbling motors a quiet rebellion against obsolescence. Others have been preserved in museums, frozen in time as monuments to a philosophy of endurance we've largely forgotten, but far too many have been lost. Their seasoned frames melted down to feed the endless churn of fleeting tech. As I think on this, a heavy question lingers. In our blind sprint toward innovation, have we sacrificed the very foundation of trust between maker and machine, trading the ironclad reliability of the past for a future where nothing is truly ours to keep? As we reach the final reckoning of this tale, let's confront the enduring legacy of machines like the 1942 Monarch lathe and the hollow promise of today's CNC giants, staring down the grim reality of what we've built and what we've broken. Those wartime workhorses, forged in an era of necessity, still carry a weight of purpose that modern tech can't replicate. Their cast iron bones, tempered by decades of unrelenting toil, stand as silent sentinels in a world obsessed with the next shiny thing. I've seen these old beasts in action even now, tucked away in gritty, oil-stained garages, their operators coaxing out one more precise cut with a knowing nod to the past. They've survived not just the physical grind, but the cultural shift that tried to erase them, proving that true engineering doesn't bow to time or trend. Their very existence is a rebuke to an industry that's forgotten the meaning of permanence, a reminder of when a machine was a pact between craftsman and creator, not a ticking time bomb waiting to betray its owner. Contrast that with the modern CNC landscape, where a $100,000 investment can turn to junk over a single failed microchip. I recall a specific instance, a 2022 horizontal machining center in a bustling Ohio shop, halted dead in its tracks when a custom servo controller gave out. The machine's mechanical heart was flawless, its spindle and ways ready for another decade of service. But the proprietary electronics, locked behind a wall of corporate secrecy, offered no path to revival. The manufacturer's response? A shrug and a quote for a new model, while the shop owner watched a mountain of debt grow taller. This is the CNC death clock at its most insidious. A deliberate design flaw that ensures obsolescence isn't a risk, but a guarantee. It's not just a machine dying. It's a livelihood, a legacy, snuffed out by a system that values profit over partnership. The frame of that machine, a marvel of precision casting, was dragged to the scrap heap, its potential squandered by a $10 component that could have been replaced if only the blueprints weren't guarded like state secrets. This divergence in philosophy between building for eternity and building for expiration didn't happen by accident. It was a slow, calculated erosion of values. Starting in the late 20th century, when industrial giants realized that selling durability meant selling less often, the shift to proprietary systems wasn't about innovation. It was about control. By embedding custom circuit boards and encrypted software into every critical function, manufacturers turned owners into tenants, forced to pay ongoing tribute through service contracts and mandatory upgrades. The excuse of safety and complexity became a convenient mask for greed, with regulations often weaponized to justify locking out independent repair. A blown fuse on a Monarch could be swapped by anyone with a screwdriver and a spare. A failed ASIC on a modern CNC requires a pilgrimage to the manufacturer's altar, if they deign to help at all. We've traded the rugged autonomy of the past for a fragile dependency, where a single withheld update can turn a powerhouse into a paperweight. The cost isn't just measured in dollars, it's in the erosion of trust, the loss of agency, As craftsmen find themselves at the mercy of a machine they can't truly call their own. This betrayal stings all the more when you consider the broader impact on our industrial soul. The old iron era fostered a bond, a sense of ownership that extended beyond the shop floor to the very identity of the worker. A machinist in the 1940s didn't just run a lathe. He mastered it, knew its quirks, patched its wounds, and passed it down as an heirloom of skill and sweat. Today, that connection is severed. Shop owners live with the constant shadow of the death clock, knowing that their investment could be invalidated by a software glitch or a discontinued part at any moment. The pride of maintenance has been replaced by the dread of obsolescence, a fear that no amount of expertise can overcome when the system itself is rigged against repair. It's a mechanical holocaust, with perfectly viable equipment sent to the furnace not for lack of strength, but for lack of a firmware key, a stark illustration of how far we've strayed from the principles that once powered the world's greatest industrial feats. So, where do these icons of endurance stand now, in a world that seems hell-bent on forgetting them? A fortunate few, like some Monarch lathes, still turn in obscure workshops, their rumbling defiance a quiet middle finger to the disposable age, maintained by stubborn souls who refuse to let history rust away. Others have found sanctuary in museums, preserved as artifacts of a time when we built to outlast ourselves, their polished surfaces reflecting a craftsmanship we've largely abandoned. But the majority have met a sadder fate, dismantled and melted down, their seasoned metal recycled into the very systems that doomed them. As I ponder this, a heavy truth settles in our relentless chase for fleeting efficiency. Have we bartered away the unbreakable spirit of the past for a present where even our mightiest tools are destined to crumble under the weight of corporate convenience?